Good evening, everyone. For those joining us and utilizing ASL interpreters, our interpreters today are Allison Zilg and Craig Ridgway. You can pin their video and or move them into the equal sign in the equal view for WebEx. And cart services are information are in the chat. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Arva Rice. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the interim chair of the Civilian Complaint Review Board. I would like to call the CCRB's May public board meeting to order. Would the rest of the board members like to introduce themselves, starting with Joe?
Oh, sorry. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joseph Puma. I'm the City Council appointee on the board from Manhattan. I happen to be a public housing resident hailing from the Lower East Side, and it's great to be here in Brooklyn tonight.
Good evening. My apologies. I was speaking with Joseph and got him in trouble for not starting on time. My name is Joe Fox. I'm the police commissioner, Keyshawn Sewell appointee. I did 37 years with the NYPD, and I'm retired for 5 years. Thank you.
I'm Queens. I'm from Southeast Queens. I've been working for the city for 20 years, and welcome everyone.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michael Rivadeneira. I am the City Council designee from the Bronx, and I hail from the Bronx. My pronouns are he and him. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Charlene Brown-Wyans. I am the Police Commissioner Designee. I hail from Queens, but I was born in Brooklyn, so I'm back home in Brooklyn, and I retired from the NYPD after 26 years.
My name is John Darsh. I'm the executive director of the agency, and I use he, him pronouns.
Good evening. My name is June Northern. I'm a mayor appointee and I'm from Brooklyn.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Jamat. I'm a mayor appointee and I'm from Queens and spent my whole life in New York City.
It's on. Good evening, John Siegel. I'm a appointee of the mayor, and I practice law in Manhattan.
Good evening. My name is Frank Tuaya. I'm a police commissioner designee, and I spent 4 years on the corner of Atlantic and Washington going to high school, so there were a lot of fond memories to come back here. And I wish I had bought a house back then for $50,000.
Brother will be on soon. Ms. Simmons will be on soon, but she's having some technical difficulties.
Terrific. Thank you. And thank you to the board members, and thank you for all of you all for joining us here in person this evening. It's great to be back in Brooklyn. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the April board meeting minutes.
The April board meeting minutes are approved.
Can I get a second? I'm sorry, I forgot to ask if there were are there any changes or corrections to the minutes? Not. All right, so we'll go with the motion. We have a motion and we have a second. Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
All those approve, those opposed, the April board meeting minutes are approved. Thank you. On April 24th, the Administrative Prosecution Unit began their trial against police officers Thompson and Davis for the killing of Kowalski Trawick. 1 week before, Deputy Trial Commissioner Maldonado tried to dismiss the wrongful entry specifications against both officers. In court, CCRB prosecutors argued why the CCRB should have the right to argue the charge and prevailed. The trial will restart tomorrow morning. Since our last board meeting, City Hall has revoked the additional 4% PEG, but still is proposing cuts. Unfortunately, the current proposed budget leaves the CCRB with only $32,000 for overtime budget, which would not cover our current operating cost and certainly limit us from hiring more positions. The team this affects the most is our new unit on racial profiling and bias-based policing. We originally requested over 50 positions for this team, and the City Council budgeted 33. Thus far, we have hired 13 team members and have no budget left to round out the team. Based on the proposed budget, the agency intends to resume referring profiling allegations to the department, the police department, at the end of the fiscal year. This is not a decision made in haste, but this agency owes the people of the city an honest assessment of our ability to do the work. We are grateful for the City Council's support as the council proposed increasing the agency's budget by an additional $8 million and allowing us to hire over 90 positions. We hope for support from OMB on this matter, as we currently will have the funding to fulfill our charter mandate. The agency is hopeful that these circumstances will change so that we do not have to take this step. I will update you all at the June board meeting about this situation. I would also like to take a moment to mourn the death of Jordan Neely and send my deepest condolences to his family. Over the past several days, New Yorkers have exercised their right to peacefully protest Jordan Neely's death and how the case has been handled. Unfortunately, we have already received several complaints regarding NYPD intervention during these protests, including the arrest of a credentialed photojournalist. The CCRB is here to protect New Yorkers' rights to peacefully protest and will work to hold officers who violated that right accountable. Thank you to Blondell Pinnock, CEO of Restoration Plaza, and Marlon Rice, and all of the restoration staff for hosting us this evening. We will now hear from Executive Director John Darsh on other agency updates. John?
Thank you, Chair Rice. Access to key evidence has been one of the leading factors delaying CCRB investigations and protecting misconduct. Often, records are sealed because police misconduct took place, but the CCRB does not have access to sealed records. In order for the agency to get access to sealed records, we have to file unsealing motions, which can take months, if not years, to process. One case that continues to be stalled for this reason is the CCRB's prosecution of the officer responsible for the death of Delron Smalls. The CCRB filed an unsealing motion in October 2021. After a year and a half, the judge decided to unseal the evidence. Unfortunately, the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association appealed this decision. The disciplinary proceeding against the officer who killed Mr. Small continues to languish while the appeal goes forward. The state legislature currently has a bill that would grant the CCRB an exemption from sealing statutes, and we hope for the legislature's support on this issue. BWC footage is another key piece of evidence that is essential to CCRB investigations. CCRB investigators are in the best position to search for body-worn camera footage relevant to each case. Direct access to body-worn camera footage would mean cases are resolved more quickly and more accurately. The percentage of cases decided on the merits, which is where the CCRB can determine by a preponderance of the evidence what actually occurred, goes up. Not just substantiations, but also determining that officers' conduct was within NYPD guidelines when we have body-worn camera footage. There is a bill pending before the City Council now that would give the CCRB direct access to body-worn camera footage. This bill is a very strong bill, and we thank the council for recognizing it, recognizing the need for direct access, and hope the bill passes. Before the meeting resumes, I just want to inform you of a few quick things. Our office is open for walk-in complaints, but it is also possible to file complaints online at nyc.gov/CCRB complaint. That is nyc.gov/CCRB COMPLAINT, or by telephone at 1-800-341-2272, or by dialing 311. If anyone wishes to file a complaint tonight, we have 3 investigators on hand ready to take new complaints or information about complaints we've already received. Those investigators are Emma Steidehar, Rob Bryan. Oh, we have 4 people here today: Ethan Waterman and Delali Madison. We have to end this meeting by 8:30 tonight because there's an extremely complicated case the full board needs to review in executive session. So I'm going to ask you all to respect your neighbors and keep your comments to 4 minutes. If you're watching this online and wish to participate in the public comment portion of the meeting, please make sure you use the raise your hand function. I want to thank the staff of the CCRB for their hard work, and thanks again to the members of the public who came here tonight. We truly appreciate your interest.
Thank you, John. Does anyone have any questions of our executive director? Do any board members have any questions for the executive director? Okay. All right, seeing none, we're going to have a presentation. Ma'am, we're going to have an open portion to the meeting, sure, in just a few moments, okay? Thank you so much. We are going to have a presentation from our Director of Outreach, Mr. Jahai Rose. Jahai?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending. Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Jahai Rose. I'm the Director of Outreach for the Civilian Complaint Review Board. I go by he, him pronouns. We're just going to share some information about what the CCRB does. So bear with me for one moment. So the CCRB is a city agency. We are the largest oversight entity over the largest police force in the country. The CCRB investigates, mediates, and in some cases administratively prosecutes allegations of misconduct alleged against members of the NYPD. The CCRB is governed by a 15-member board. You've met many of our board members today. 5 board members are appointed by the mayor, 5 are appointed by the New York City Council, 3 are designated by the police commissioner, and 1 is appointed by the New York City Public Advocate. The chair is jointly appointed by the City Council and the New York City Mayor. The CCRB could accept allegations of force against members of the NYPD. The allegations that we can investigate are FATO, force, abuse of authority, discourtesy, and offensive language. As I mentioned, FATO is actually a helpful reminder to help you to remember what our allegation, what the jurisdiction is. Just a few facts about the Right to Know Act. The Right to Know Act was a law that went into effect in October of 2018. The law impacts interactions between members of the public and the New York City Police Department, which include officers identifying themselves, such as providing their name, badge number, rank, command to members of the public. With some exceptions, officers should be telling you the purpose of the encounter or the interaction. Officers should, in some cases, inform you of a right to say no when they're asking you to search for your consent to search your person, property, and or home or vehicle. And officers, in certain circumstances, should be offering you a business card. This business card has identifying information for the officer and information as to how you can file a comment and or complaint about the interaction with you and that officer. Civilians can request these business cards in all encounters. This is a copy of what the business card looks like. Now, there are a few different ways to file complaints to the CCRB. Just to name some of the easier ways, one is by going online and filing it at nyc.gov/CCRB complaint. You could also call the CCRB's hotline at 1-800-341-CCRB. Also 1-800-341-2272. Remember, if you see footage of misconduct on social media or on the news, you can feel free to file a complaint, even if you were not there in person. Our typical handle for the CCRB is CCRB_NYC. Other ways to file a complaint with the CCRB by calling 311. You could also come to the CCRB's office in Lower Manhattan at 100 Church Street on the 10th floor. You could also file complaints with us on social media. Our platforms are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. As I mentioned, the handle is typically CCRB_NYC. You could also file a complaint in the mail by sending it to 100 Church Street, 10th floor, New York, New York, zip code 10007. You could also file a complaint at any local police precinct. It does not have to be the precinct where the interaction may have taken place. Officers are required to accept CCRB complaints at all precincts. You could also request a complaint form and a postage-free envelope. If you'd like a outreach presentation or informational presentation about what the CCRB does for virtually anyone in your community, community organizations, friends, family, feel free to reach out to the CCRB's outreach team at outreach@ccrb.nyc.gov. You could also follow the CCRB on social media on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Board members have any questions of Mr. Rose? All right, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I want to ask our Assemblywoman that represents this community, Assembly Member Stephanie Zinnerman, if you would like to make a public comment.
Good to see you. Good evening, everyone. It is wonderful to see this room filled. This is a very important civic moment for our community to host the CCRB for this month. I am the sitting assembly member for Bedford-Stuyvesant and Northern Crown Heights, the 56. And I want to first start out by just thanking these wonderful public servants that are sitting behind the microphones. Across this nation, thank you, absolutely. It's important to know that we have about 700 municipalities just in New York State, and there's only about 200 CCRBs across the nation. And so it just really underscores just how important this work is. We've all lived through a pandemic. We've lived, if you're as old as I, at least a half a century of looking at police abuses across the country, some very deadly ones that we all remember and we still say their names. And so what they do and what you do as a community is so important. We don't ever want to get to a point where we are too afraid to raise our voices, to use the resources that are available to you through the CCRB. And I know sometimes when people have been terrorized and hurt and are shamed because they were victimized, they don't want to come before another municipal body in order to make a complaint. But we've invested time and money in their ability to sit before you and listen to what has happened to you and advocate on your behalf. So I thank you for trusting this process and coming here tonight, and please spread the word. And as always, we thank you all for what you do as well. Thank you so much and have a great meeting. You're welcome.
In the room as well, former Assemblywoman Annette Robinson. I didn't know, Ms. Robinson, if you wanted to make a comment as well. To invite you. Please.
Yes, please.
Good evening, everyone. Certainly, as the assembly member has spoken in terms that it's important to raise your voices. So I just want to say good evening to all of you and thank you, Ms. Rice, and for the members of the board. Thank you for being here this evening and all of you that have assembled. Because so often that we're in the street protesting and then we say, who do we protest and have a voice to say something to? So I just want to say this. When I was in the city council, there was no CCRB. But then we were able to, because people raised their voices, there became a CCRB. So you have an opportunity this evening to speak up and say what's on your mind and what's on your heart. And as I saw that, it talked about your rights are, even if you see something on footage and you think it's not the right thing, you have an opportunity to speak on it. So have a good evening and please speak up. Thank you.
We're going to turn this on. Thank you so much for those comments and for encouraging people to speak up and to speak out. We also have joining us virtually, City Councilwoman Alexa Aviles, if she wanted to make her comments virtually.
Hi, everyone. Unmute.
Yourself off of mute, yeah.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm happy to be here. My name is Councilmember Alexa Viles. I represent District 38 in South Brooklyn, encompassing the neighborhoods of Red Hook and Sunset Park. Just glad to be here and listen to the conversation and the services that CCRB offers our citizens. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. We will now hear from local community leaders, and we want to thank you so much for joining us. As a reminder, as you heard from our executive director, we want to keep your comments to 4 minutes. And Yahira, I'm going to ask you if you could please call on our first speaker.
Thank you, Chair. First, we will be hearing from Tyler Campbell, who's joining us in person, and then followed by Assemblymember Monique Chandler-Waterman.
And I believe I'm missed Assemblywoman Monique Chandler-Waterman. Yes. Hello? Hello? Make his way to the podium. That would be fine. And before you go, we're just going to ask our Assemblywoman if she could make some remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank y'all so much for organizing. Thank you to CRB team. Thank you to my colleague, Assemblywoman Stephanie Zimmerman, for all the leadership she's done in that district. So I want to first also say that I have been working with CCRB for a very long time in our street engagement. And I had the privilege to working with Jahai Rose, Director of Outreach, and now passing on to Venus Scantleberry, who I understand will be our outreach coordinator here in District 58, covering East Flatbush, Canarsie City. Can you hear me?
Just for a moment.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
We can still hear you. Explaining the
Hello, can you still hear me?
territories that the districts
Hello?
that you represent.
Yes, okay, perfect. It sounds kind of low, so I'm gonna continue talking. So I had the privilege to work with CCRB. I have a mental health task force that I created since I've been in office, and a public safety task force, and CCRB has very instrumental in those task force, and we have task force members in the group right now. They're in front of you today. We've also done Occupy the Corner and a safety alliance where we blocked those streets and we flooded with resources in hotspot areas. CCRB has been very instrumental in going to community members, hearing their complaints. As you know, our community is overrun by police brutality, and just by having that lending voice and the resources that they can use and be armed with and information. So I really appreciate the services and actually the underground, being on the ground, speaking directly and connecting and meeting people where they're at. I really appreciate that, and I'd like to continue our partnership with CCRB, and any way we can further partner, I'll be greatly appreciative. So thank you again to Jahai Rose for your leadership in our district, and I look forward to working with Venus Scantleberry. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much for their comments and for your partnership. And so we're going to go to our community leaders in the room. So if you could just state your name once again and bring your comment.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tyler Campbell. I come to you all on behalf of Project Restore Bed-Stuy, which is sponsored by the Bridge Street Corporation for Development. I had a set of remarks that I was going to say today, but I was challenged with speaking from the heart, and so that's what I'll do. I'm going to keep it brief, but I want to say I am often don't come to events like these because I'm often disillusioned by what actually happens and what comes of these kind of conversations. But what I will say is that in my work that we do inside of Project Restore, we work with what you might label at-risk young men, but I call them the young men who the city cast aside, right? And one of our young men just recently had a situation, regular situations actually with Brooklyn police where he was accosted, illegally searched, and beaten by police, right? And I asked him to come here, I asked him to speak, I asked him to file a complaint. You know what he said? He said, hell no. He said, I would not do such a thing. I look around this room right now and I can count on my hand the number of young people in this room, right? So I'm curious what we're doing in terms of how are we reaching out to young people? How are we really getting outside in our communities? And what are we actually doing in the first place, right? Because this is what I'm concerned about the most. But instead of me taking up, because I only have 4 minutes, I want to pass it to one of my young people who was brave enough to come here and speak on some of his beliefs and, thoughts on actually what we can do about this. So that's you, Jason.
How y'all doing? Good evening. My name is Jason Bostic. My name is Jason Bostic, Justice Ambassador, and I said police interaction should be prominent on problem solving more than problem escalating. I said the most common problem in my community on the margin of society is stereotyping. Everybody on my 4-block radius is considered criminals. After I work 2 jobs and go to my internship at Columbia University, I shouldn't be harassed by police after a long day of activities. I'm judged based on how I look with dreadlocks and tattoos than rather who I am. Detectives don't follow the New York state law in my community and stop and frisk anyone who looks suspicious, but it's usually people who look like me. I've been hopped out and followed before to my apartment door with my shirt being pulled up and crotch being grabbed. It became so traumatizing that I changed how I dress. I said what the CCRB can do to build trust and awareness and train these police in our neighborhoods who from other communities is in social skills. These cops are normal people taking tests to become cops and not taking actual assessments to control the situation. These cops are scared of us and the community we're in. Train these cops in sociology to allow them to learn skills to see when a person is scarred from trauma and have disabilities and not causing a problem. And that goes for people who are war veterans and when people are troubled kids in the middle of the United States who shoot up schools.
That's it. Give it up for Jason. Give it up for Jason. Give it up for Jason, y'all. Thank you for this opportunity. We appreciate it.
Tyler, and thank you, Jason, for coming and representing for so many young people. We do appreciate your comments. I'm going to ask if John wants to talk at all about our Youth Advisory Board and see if there's any other members of the board who want to make a comment as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Jason, I just wanted to thank you for sharing your truth with us here today. I thought it was very powerful. And Tyler, one of the things that we don't just come to the community every other month when we're doing board meetings. Our outreach team goes to groups like yours to talk to people and let them know about the agency. And so if there's a way for Jahai or Venus or anyone else from our outreach team to come to your organization and other organizations in this neighborhood that have people who need to hear about our agency and what we do, we will go there. And one of the great things about these board members is that they also serve as advocates and ambassadors for the agency. And I know that Mr. Jamat is doing something in his neighborhood tomorrow night and has invited Jai to join him. So this is a giant city, and we do not have a lot of resources. There are less than 250 people at the CCRB to have oversight over a police force with 50,000 employees and in a city of 8 million people. So we need your help to let people know that we are here. And just by being here, you folks are helping us educate the community about what we can do and what we're here. One of the other things the chair mentioned is a youth advisory council that we have, because we know it is important not just to hear from the leaders and elders of our community, but also from the young people who are kind of at the sharp end of encounters with the police, and we need to hear from them about what they are feeling and what they are experiencing.
Quickly, just to go back to that point that you just made, I appreciate you responding like that. And I want to ask, right, what is actually going to come of, increasing the CCRB? Because my question is, right, to me, what this shows, right, as you said, right, you only have a certain number of people who oversee this work, and I appreciate you all for doing this work, but isn't that emblematic of where our resources and where our attention actually goes? If we have 50,000 officers, right, new NYPD, but we have how many people that are supposed to be doing this work to hold them accountable, right? And we wonder why our communities aren't safe. What I think is so interesting, right, if you come and you walk through Roosevelt Projects, you walk through Breedway, you walk through Marcy, you know what you'll run into? Police everywhere. And you know what happens in all those neighborhoods? Crime and violence. You know why? Because they're not preventing crime at all. They're merely just responding, right? And when they respond, they're often, as Jason mentioned, harassing the wrong people. And we come to these places, we come to these things, and we always want to, have our voices heard. But my thing is, as one of the people who was up here a moment ago, we've been talking about these issues since what, 1990, 1980, 19 whenever? You feel what I'm saying? 19 whenever we said, right? You feel what I'm saying? It's been the same issues, the same problems. We get the body cams, we do this thing, we do that thing, and we hear about the bad apples. Oh, the bad apples, right? And my question, well, not my question, but my statement really is the full bad apple analogy that we love to talk about is so many bad apples spoil the rotten tree, right? And if we were talking about so many bad apples, it's not a few bad apples, it's the actual tree itself. And so if I can leave you all with anything, it's that I truly believe and know that NYPD is in fact the biggest gang in New York City. And we have all these gang task force that are designed to, shut down and get on gang forces, but we don't actually look at NYPD, right? And the governing body, you all, whose job it is under-resourced and doesn't have enough money to do so. And so my challenge to the city really is, how are we going to do that, right? And so I apologize for taking up more time. And, by me putting my face up here, I might become a target of NYPD. And so if y'all want to come get me, y'all know where to find me. Free to God.
Thank you, Tyler, for your comment. I believe Board Member AU had a response.
Thank you, Chairman Rice. Yeah. Thank you very much, and make sure that you do show up. Be encouraged by this meeting, because like you said, 1990, actually, it might have been 1790 since we've been having these conversations. I want to coin this phrase to you, Tyler. It's a phrase that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You bear witness to that? Yes. And so when you look at the culture of policing and the culture of young people, I don't want the young brother to change his identity, because part of how he dresses is who he is, and that's his identity. So, but you can't be afraid also, and I'm not saying you, but our people, afraid to look at agencies that really are representing them. And because of the bureaucracy, it looks like that we're not. Okay, so you can Google us. You see we are doing the work outside this meeting, and we dressed up for you. We didn't dress up for us. All right, we dressing up for the public to make sure that we look respectful enough that when these things that happen, these things, we are almost traumatized by the stuff that we have to vote on. We are traumatized by the budget. And if you go into OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, there is a question why so much money is going here and so much money is not going. It's intentional. And so how do we galvanize the population to look at the intentional things that happen in these 7 congressional districts, that where most of the crime comes from and where most of the policing are present? So it doesn't show that policing is stopping the crime. So now if you know and aware of the summer of violence, we're here there now, right? That there's five precincts in Brooklyn, 3 in Bronx, 3 in Southeast Queens, that are getting 40 new police officers daily to address the crime, that mostly when the mayor says that the crime is leaving. So let's just be careful and really make sure that we take care of us and ours, and don't be afraid to invite more people. And the interesting thing with Jahai Rose, the brother that does the strategy of going out and getting people to be aware and conscious of what CCRB does. Don't be afraid to get young people to become a part of that, because that's what it is. As Jay-Z says, there's levels to this, and young people got to learn the levels to it. Thank you, brother.
Much. Can we have our, Yahira, can we have our next person?
Yes, Madam Chair. Next, we'll be hearing from Stacey Ann D'Souza and Mario Menjivar, for Youth Advocacy Corps of the Mental Health Awareness Project.
I know there are people who want to make comments, and there'll be an opportunity for that at the end. We will hear from folks who are in the room.
Yes, hello. My name is Mario. I go by he, him pronouns, and I'm with Youth Advocacy Corps such as Stacey Ann.
Stacey Ann, I go by she, her.
It is so far, it's an amazing work that CCRB does, and I'm proud to be here today. For the Youth Advocacy Corps, I'm representing MAP, which is the Mental Health Awareness Project here, and it's created to increase the importance of mental health awareness. And our project works to normalize conversations around mental health and guarantee that those who need it can get to it, and ensure that everyone knows that it's okay to not be okay. And speaking of conversations from before, something that should be brought to community members likewise, or should be town halls where we share concerns on police officers and patrolling in the neighborhoods, and all this has direct contact with the community members. This is something that we have seen on experience with the ground, me and Stacey Ann, that students during the mental health workshops share that they don't feel safe with policing in their schools. They share the feelings of anxiety throughout our workshops, and overall, there's no police community bonds in the schools that we have visited, and which is something that does need improvement. Passing on to Stacey Ann on this matter.
Covered some of the topics that All right, so one of the main concerns was definitely students feeling anxiety and stress about having heavy policing in the classroom, heavy policing by the train stations when they come out of the train station. They don't mind having police officers at the train station, but like when they come out of school and they have like a whole group, like it's very overwhelming for them. So they suggested to reduce the amount of officers and find ways to communicate with the young adults and the youths in a positive way, so that they have the officers have empathy, and to have less biases in diverse communities, so that they know how to handle situations and to make the students feel safe. One of the ways that the city can improve their communication and with the community is definitely increasing and expanding the resources available. We learned about CCRB from Venus. She came to our program and did a workshop. So that's where we learned about it as a group. So I think it's important for us to like share it with our community and find more ways to get the young people involved and letting them know about their rights, and even the adults, for them to know their rights, finding creative ways to do it at resource fairs, maybe the advisory board for the youths to come out and do like maybe like plays or videos to kind of like send the message in different ways, so that the community could receive it in different ways as well. And that's it.
And I have one last thing to add to wrap it all up, is that police officers should lead by example with and without their uniforms. And to get respect, they have to give respect.
Yes, like Sergeant Clark and Venus, how they set examples and they help us to really see the community in a different way, no matter the color of our skin. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mario and Stacey Ann, for that presentation and for your thoughtful strategies for ways in which we can do a better job of getting the work of CCRB out, as well as to improve police and community relations. So I want to thank you so much for your thoughtfully put together presentation. John, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, that but I did hope that you guys are interested in the youth advisory committee for the CCRB and think about joining when we next open our applications.
As John stated, we are going to have those folks who have not already signed up to speak that are in the room. We'll definitely have your opportunity to speak. So when I call out for Yahira, I'm asking her to let us know those folks who have already signed up to speak, but we will get to everyone. So Yahira, would you please call on our next speaker?
Yes, our next invited speaker is Marva Brown, Public Defender at Legal Aid Society.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marva Brown. I'm a lawyer with the Legal Aid Society. I've been a practicing attorney for 16 years, and in that time, I've been a public defender representing clients who have been arrested by the NYPD. And I've also done work with city council members, the Brooklyn Borough President's Office to help them with their constituent affairs in instances where the clients may not have been arrested and have criminal charges pending against them, but they have had interactions with NYPD officers where they want to make complaints because they have been wronged or abused by officers of the NYPD. I'm also a resident of the North Crown Heights community. This year makes 20 years of me living in Brooklyn, and I'm a proud Brooklyn resident. I work in our community. I'm a member of Brooklyn Community Board 8. I'm on the board of Families and Friends of the Wrongfully Convicted. I do work with Save Our Streets and other community-based organizations where I've had the opportunity to speak to young people. I think the men that spoke already did well to address the problems that are had within our community. So I'll move on to what can the city do to improve community relations between the police and the community. And the one thing I wanted to point out to you all is that the CCRB and the police should not let police get away with lying. The CCRB must investigate, the NYPD must root out and punish false, misleading statements that are made by officers. We heard from Mr. Jahai about abuse of authority, but I did not hear him mention the change that came into effect on March 26, 2021, where abuse of authority now includes untruthful testimony and written statements made against members of the public. As a public defender, I can't count how many times I've met a client in arraignments and I read a criminal court complaint to them and they said, "That's a lie, I didn't do that, that's not what happened, that's not where I was, that's not what I had." And then we are left with charged with trying to prove a person's innocence based on false and misleading statements. We know that false and misleading statements by police officers make people lose their liberty, their inability to take care of their families, be home, take care of their children, and work so that they can support their families. The scourge of criminal contacts is a terrible thing because we see in the media every day what society thinks of criminals. Also, we know that lying officers lead to wrongful convictions. I know that sometimes a person who has pending charges against them does not cooperate with the CCRB. They don't make statements to the CCRB because that is in protection of their constitutional rights. And CCRB investigators need to be trained to understand why people do not make statements against them when there are allegations against the officers. False, misleading statements during CCRB interviews or false statements during court proceedings must be taken into consideration by the CCRB, whether it's in official paperwork or criminal court complaints, or even lying on the stand when they're testifying at trials and hearings. As an attorney, I've represented clients where in court, officers are found incredible. This needs to be addressed by the CCRB and the NYPD. We have hosts of cases of officers who have been found incredible, guns suppressed, charges dropped, cases dismissed because officers are lying on the stand. What is the CCRB doing about that? What are the investigators doing? Are they trained to investigate and recognize false and misleading statements? CCRB investigators must also weigh civilian testimony equally against officer testimony. Where they meet with civilians, they should give the same weight to civilian testimony as they give to officers. CCRB officer investigators should be trained on the impact of pending criminal charges on their investigations and let the public know how it impacts their determination findings. Finally, if the city wants to build police community relations, the commissioner's frequent deviation from CCRB recommendations must stop because it is an impediment to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, for that powerful testimony and your underscoring of the newest area that the CCRB has power and authority, and that is in false and misleading statements. And I'm going to have our executive director speak a little bit about our work in that area.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Brown, one of the things the agency does when civilians have made complaints or the alleged victims of complaints that have been made by other people, but still have pending criminal charges, is we allow them to close the case pending the completion of that litigation. And then we follow up with them and reopen those cases and conduct investigations so that we can get to the final determination after the civilian can make a statement without impacting their criminal case. And that is a relatively recent change that we made, or maybe I'm just very old and it is not so recent. Our chief of investigations looked at me when I said relatively recent and shook his head. So that's why I realized it's probably not as recent as I thought it was. The other thing about how we credit civilian and member of service testimony is we do not favor one party's statement over the other. We look for whether it is extrinsic evidence that can confirm or deny parts of a person's story, or we look at the elements of the story itself so that we can find out what has happened in an event. One of the real things that has helped the agency make those determinations is the expansion of the presence of video in our lives. Not just body-worn camera video, but surveillance video and the video cameras that almost all of us carry in our hands these days. And the agency has made real strides in not just accepting the video from the public and getting the video from the police department, but in how we analyze that video. And it's one of the things that the investigations unit is very good at and that I take a lot of pride in. But we have also trained our investigators to use trauma-informed investigative techniques so that our investigators, when they're talking to civilians and getting their statements, are cognizant that the civilian, the person we're speaking to, may have encountered a real trauma before they came to us, whether it is the incident that they're complaining about or other traumas in their lives. And we really focus on using that to inform how we get the information and how we evaluate the information.
Did you say anything about?
So with regard to untruthful statements made by members of service, this agency has jurisdiction not only over untruthful statements made to the CCRB, but as Ms. Brown noted, we have jurisdiction over untruthful statements made by members of service in other entities. So if an officer makes a false statement on a criminal court complaint, or while they're testifying at a hearing or at a trial, that is misconduct that falls in the CCRB's jurisdiction. And if we receive a complaint about it, we will investigate it.
Thank you. Thank you, John, and thank you again, Ms. Brown, for your testimony. Yahira, would you please the next speaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our final invited speaker before going into public session is Somia El-Romian, founder of the Women Empowerment Coalition.
Good evening, everyone. In the beginning, I want to say thank you so much for CCRB for the work that they do and for reaching out to the community to educate them about their rights and what they can do if they face any issue with the policing. As a community activist who have been working with the Arab community in South Brooklyn for more than 15 years, I have been witnessing a lot of issues when it comes to policing, especially when it comes to the domestic violence survivor. I have been witnessing that a lot of domestic violence survivor who have been through abusive relationship, they tried as much as they can not to reach out to the police and call in their husband because they do not feel safe. And especially like, you know, when like there is some like, you know, cases that happened and they call the police, or like, you know, the police officers who came to the house, whether they don't speak the language and they end up hearing from the abuser and ignore what the survivor is saying, or they don't understand with the culture, there is a culture barrier, which is a huge thing, and ending up taking the women to the precinct. And that's actually happened in my community. While she's one, like, you know, she's the survivor, she get hit by her husband and end up, they take their kids, like, and they like stood by the husband because there is a relationship between the husband and the police officer. He know him. That's exactly what happened. And it's really sad to see that happening. And when we had the, like your team came over to our organization to start doing these type of training about what they can do, we start hearing a lot of stories about like, you know, how like our community do not trust police. That's really sad. We need to build this trust. How we can build it? There are a lot of things that we can do. We need to train the police officers, whether when it comes to culture things or it comes to how to deal with the Muslim women, hijabi women. That's one of the things that we need to, like, you know, talk about it deeply. The second thing, there is no one should be above the law. Everyone has to follow the law. And I don't understand why NYPD, like, it's not all of them, some of them, they actually always, like, you know, they think themselves that they are the law and they do whatever they think it's right when it's like, you know, and when you start talking to them. I'm, as a person of color who came to this country in 2007, I had a police officer who followed me after I parked my car and followed me like to in front of my office to say that, oh, you made, you were using your phone while you are driving, while actually I have a Bluetooth in my car and I don't have to use my phone, I will hold it. So he followed me in front of my office and made me return back to my car to give him my registration and my my ID number to give me ticket. And I told him, like, I didn't do that. And I, like, you know, and also, like, why you waited until I stopped my car and I walked 2 blocks and you followed me with another officer? And he said, I'm going to arrest you if you are not going to go back to the car and bring the ID and the registration number. So I didn't understand how's that function. But like, we need to hold police accountable. We want to make sure that even like precinct, when they hire police officers, they have to hire people who understand the culture in the area and the district that they are working in. And also at the same time, we hope that the CCRB can push to have the commander officers to be elected person, not appointed, because that way we can hold this person accountable. Our community can hold them accountable when we elect those people. And that's what we hope to see. And we had this conversation with our Mayor, Eric Adam, and I felt that he's also supportive for this idea. And we hope so to see it implementing in the future. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Samia, for your comment and your testimony. Is there anyone, including our executive director, who wanted to respond to her comment? Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We appreciate it. Yahira, is that correct, that all of the invited members have spoken and we can open up to those who are in the room?
Correct.
That is correct. Thank you. So if there's anyone who would like to share with us, once again, you do have a 4-minute limit. on your comments, but we are here to hear your comments and feedback. So if you could just state your name.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Barrett. I work for St. Nick's Alliance Workforce Development Center, and I work for a program called Youth Build. I didn't start the job not too long ago. However, I've seen and heard a lot of stories from our youth about police involvement. We've also had the pleasure of having Venus in our building to explain to them what the CCRB does and also explain to them their rights and knowing them. I do think that there are many issues that we have with the youth involving the police, but one thing that I don't think that a lot of people or a lot of youth know is how the system operates and how and what we can do to help it. I do think that is a great idea that the CCRB has an outreach team to speak to different students because our students walked away with a lot of information after that one meeting. However, there are tons of youth my age and even in the age range that don't have resources or don't have things that are just being looked at as a report on a paper instead of as a person. So I do think that in terms of representation, in terms of the police being involved in different aspects of a young person's life also may help with the encounters that we have, and then also may help with the fear that we have of the police. I do think that not only in schools, but those people that are on the streets or not don't have direct links to any type of support may be underneath those harassment files as well, but don't really necessarily know how to speak for themselves. And then we also have people in our center who also advocate for them as well. I think that the main problem is like getting to the person and not seeing them as a case or a file, understanding where they're coming from, understanding whether or not they are educated or are in school. There are 18-year-olds that are on the streets that do not have any type of education, who have dropped out of school, that are looking for work, that are looking for jobs, and because they have background, because they have a history, they're not provided with the right information or don't know where to go. So I do think that it is crucial that not only the CCRB, but also the police department provide young people with resources that will allow them not only to get off of the streets, but to also be educated in other things in terms of alternate learning, getting their GED if they don't have it, or even just trying to step out and explore the world more than what is in New York and what is in the streets. So I do think that there is a connection for all the youth to be able to learn something more. Like I said, I haven't been in this job for long, but I have realized the impact that we can make, and my whole staff is also youth as well, or young adults. I do think that there's an impact that we can make in terms of bringing individuals that do cross paths with law enforcement a better housing or a better opportunity for them to reach out and also learn more about themselves and learn more about the law enforcement, and also learn more and educate themselves more about what they can do better for society. So, yes.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for your comment. May I ask you just a quick question? So you said you're a staff person at Youth Build.
Yes, I am a staff member. I'm the recruitment and retention specialist at St. Nick's Alliance Youth Build program. This program just started, or was just awarded in 2020. So far we have brought in up to 30 or 40 individuals in our healthcare and construction program that are trying to look for a better life for them. They're also graduating this coming June with their construction and healthcare certifications. Most of them have had encounters with the police or are just involved. And what we give them is a better understanding to what they can do in the world to make it a better place for themselves, and also what they can do in terms of, like when Venus had came in with the law enforcement, in order to actually speak to them and know their rights. So
Thank you. Thank you so much for your comments, and Youth Build is lucky to have you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to speak kind of loud so they can hear in the back, okay?
So my name is Diana Irving, and I am the community liaison at the Connect program over at IDCC Interborough. It's an outpatient mental health facility. The first thing I want to say is change. Change brings uncomfortability, right? Change makes people uncomfortable, right? So before I say what I want to say to my community, right? Change has to start in our homes. Because when the Cure Violence groups are going to these shooting responses, these are the children from our homes and our communities. If we do not take charge of our homes, we're going to have 50,000 more George Floyds and everybody else on that list. Take charge of your homes, because these children with these behaviors do not just fall out of the sky, okay? And I had to say that because you have to get uncomfortable in order to get change, okay? The second thing I want to say is police, when I was growing up, the police would come to our daycare, to our schools, and we knew them. They were friends' brothers, they were friends' dads and uncles. Now they come from other states where they watch the news and they see a place like my hometown, Brooklyn. I'm a Brooklyn girl till we die, right? They see Brooklyn on the news and then they move here and then they take a job here. They have a preconceived notion about what Brooklyn is all about. So when they come into contact with our young people, they're afraid. The human response is to be afraid. So I don't want to take that away. It's okay to be afraid. But you have the job where when the danger happens, you're running straight to it while everybody runs away from it. I do want to acknowledge that the police are human, so they are allowed to be afraid. But accountability and change, and then not just taking a job because you passed the test. Okay? So I would like to touch on the fact that the city does not take into consideration that the police of yesterday used to actually be from the neighborhoods they worked in, but now there's so much of a culture shock placing people to police neighborhoods that they may have already have a preconceived notion about. Most of them already have a fear of the unknown, as in being afraid of the very people they are paid to protect and serve, not actually knowing where the distrust of community and NYPD started. All of these things play a big part in the disconnect, and it will continue if things aren't shaken up and moved around. The police should stop into daycare centers and schools and become familiar with the kids to build relationships. If the kids have regular conversations with them, they will see them as people and begin to care for them in a different light. Sometimes taking a page from the old days works, and that would definitely build bridges. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for those comments and some concrete strategies for building police community relations. I understand that we do have a board member who has been on the line. Unfortunately, we haven't not been able to get her camera to work, but Esmeralda, Ms. Simmons, if you could hear us, if you wanted to just introduce yourself. To acknowledge that the public advocate appointee Esmeralda Simmons from the great borough of Brooklyn is listening in and is in attendance for our board meeting today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My name is Andrew Case. I use he, him pronouns. I am the supervising attorney at Latino Justice PearlDeaf. I want to start with something positive because we always come in and criticize the CCRB, but I want to thank you and I want to thank your staff for the incredible response you have had to the repeal of 50A. This agency has been a model of transparency and producing documents. I know it's hard work. I've made a lot of FOIL requests of you. I've gotten great responses, and I know it is a challenge to do that, and I know not every agency in the city and not every agency in the state is following that, so I do want to thank you for what you're doing in terms of transparency. I want to thank Mr. Rose, who reminded me or told me on the way in that he had seen me when I was the outreach director of the CCRB give a presentation at York College 16 years ago. And it's incredible to think that the work that the CCRB does lasts like that. And I know that he is reaching far many more people than I did when I was in that position. And he is making a much greater impact than I did because of the abilities that you have now to reach out and reach many more people than we did in my day. So I want to thank you for that as well. I want to tell you what I'm here for, which is that this afternoon, Latino Justice, on behalf of the Grassroots Advocates for Neighborhood Groups and Solution, the Gangs Coalition, filed a complaint based on findings that were in the Inspector General's report on the Gangs Coalition, in the Gangs database a couple of weeks ago. In that report, the Inspector General for the NYPD identified discrete acts of misconduct that are within your jurisdiction and did not recommend any discipline for the officers involved. And so we are asking you to investigate those now. For those who did not see the Gangs database report by the OIG, it found that there is a great deal of non-compliance with the NYPD's own rules for how people are supposed to be put into the NYPD gang database, rules that we find too lax to begin with. But there were 7 instances identified in that report where an officer got someone placed into the gang database by simply writing a DD-5 that said Officer X places person Y in the database, even though the NYPD rules state that an officer must identify the evidence by which he is relying on to put that person in the database. These 7 entries are written statements made against members of the public in the performance of their official duties and therefore are abuses of authority. In addition, the OIG identified 49 instances in which an officer who wished to place somebody into the gang database also signed off as his own supervisor, even though the NYPD rules require that a detective sign to put someone in, a supervisor review that and sign off. When a detective signs as his own supervisor, he's making a written statement against the members of the public in his own police duties. This too is an abuse of authority. In addition to the 49 instances of self-signing and the 7 instances of no evidence, we ask that you investigate all of these. We've submitted a detailed letter identifying them, but we also ask that you investigate these as racially biased policing incidents. The gangs database is 99% Black and Latino. Even though the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers operate in New York City, they are not included in the gangs database at all. Every entry in the gangs database is an act of racially biased policing. These 49 instances and the additional 7 instances are acts of racially biased policing in addition to abuses of authority. We ask that you investigate them as such. I heard very quickly that Acting Chair Rice said you might be abandoning the City Council's mandate that you investigate those cases. I know that's not made lightly. You said it was partially resources. We know it's also from your from the minutes of last meeting, it's also because the NYPD is not providing you needed documents. If that goes through and you can't investigate those cases, we would ask that you continue to investigate these gang database entries as abuses of authority. Don't hand those cases over to the NYPD to investigate itself. Thank you.
Mr. Case, you and I have spoken on several occasions, although I think this is the first time we've met. So it is good to meet you in person. And you said you submitted a letter?
I submitted the letter this afternoon. I have a copy of it here as well. So if someone needs it, I don't know if you want to do an intake interview. It's just reporting stuff, but I'm happy to do it.
So I think we will reach out to you, not tonight.
Fine.
We'll figure out how to move forward on these.
You have my information. And I do mean it about the FOIL stuff. You guys have been really, really positive. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that investigative work and bringing that to the attention of both the board and to the staff. We do appreciate that, Mr. Case. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Antoniqua Roberson. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am the MAP engagement coordinator for the Red Hook Community Justice Center. MAP stands for the Mayor's Action Plan for Neighborhood Safety Initiatives. And I think all of the speakers have done a great job at highlighting some of the injustices that go on here in New York. More recently, there was a raid that happened in the Red Hook houses in South Brooklyn. And I think we really need to highlight the militarization of policing that's going on in the community. It's not just average policing. This is really, 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 really intense policing. And many of the residents that I oversee within the Red Hook houses have express their trauma, express the anxiety, express the fear of just being able to leave outside of their doors. On that particular day, NYCHA should also be present here during this meeting, but they're not, I'm sure. But, just thinking about the infrastructure of NYCHA, thinking about the building infrastructure as well, and how people are living within close proximity to one another within these quarters. And so when the NYPD comes out and when they, participate in these different raids, the ripple effect that it has on a community. And one of the speakers highlighted how a lot of the, NYPD officers in that particular raid, it was ATF as well, but a lot of these officers are not from the community. And so that increased fear is highlighted in the militarization of policing here. I think that there needs to be a lot more training in terms of cultural competency to ensure that the community, that the officers that are serving the community, whether they're from there or not from there, are aware of the demographics within the community and are aware of how to adequately address the root causes of crime within the community. Increasing police, as we've seen, it does not decrease crime. We need increases in resources. We need more programming. We need the CCRB as well to come out to community partners and actually let the community know about these different things. As one of the other speakers mentioned, when we look around the room, we don't see a lot of young people, and young people are at the forefront. The Red Hook houses in particular right now, there's a lot of construction going on, and I'm sure within a lot of other NYCHA developments across the city, there's construction going on. As the construction happens, parks get closed, and there's less places for young people to be able to hang out and to congregate. And so I think that knowing such, NYPD should also be aware of the different closures that are going on, particularly in Red Hook right now. The library just recently closed. That's a cooling center. That's also a place for young people to be able to hang out in the summertime. And now that that's closed, and now that there's so much construction going on, where do our young people go? They're going to go to places like Coffee Park. And so these places have become target areas for the NYPD to target our young people, and enough is enough. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you so much for your comments. I'm sorry, can you say your first name for me one more time?
Yes, my first name is Antoniqua, last name is Roberson Dancy.
Antoniqua?
Yes, ma'am.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So I just want to point out that if the people who you work with and who are your clients don't feel comfortable filing a complaint, you can file a complaint on their behalf. And it's one of the things about our agency that many people aren't aware of is we do accept third-party complaints.
Okay.
And so if you think that the way the police behaved was inappropriate and outside of their guidelines, then please file a complaint with us on behalf of the people who you work with and work for.
Thank you.
Sure. There you go.
Question on, you mentioned constructive voting. Any young people that working on these projects? Any of the young people working on these construction projects?
So there is a recovery and resiliency program that is in the process of trying to get more young people to get the jobs, but there's a minimal amount of jobs for it.
There shouldn't be a minimal amount. Once you go back to NYCHA, it's something called 964 regulations under Section 3. That has to be 15% of the overall contract.
Okay.
And of the people that live in Red Hook.
Okay.
Okay, so you go back and you question the president of that development and tell them about 964 regulations, Section 3, and get some of the young people, 10 to 15 young people, at least to have jobs over the summer until that project is finished.
Thank you.
It's not like we don't want to put all of this on you, right?
Right.
Like that's not like you should come to us to help you solve your problems. We're not telling you, well, you go tell this person that and go tell the president of your development something else. This agency is here to make, if you are aware of misconduct by police officers and have a complaint, we will investigate. And so we have people here tonight who can take your statement. It isn't you took a first step by coming here tonight, and we appreciate it, and we appreciate
you.
you for doing it. And if there's more you can do, we'll take your help. But like, I don't want you to think that we're just sending you away. And I know that wasn't AU's intent, but I want you to understand that we appreciate that you came forward here tonight.
Thank you. And you all will be tabling at our event next Wednesday, May 17th. We will be having a local neighborhood stat event located at Bush Clinton Park in South Brooklyn in the Red Hook community. That event will be open to the entire community can come out, but particularly residents within the Red Hook houses will have the opportunity to be able to vote on different issues going on in their community. And based off of the ballots that we receive from there, we'll be able to take $30,000 to be able to reinvest into that community. So I open up the invitation for you all to come out next week. Thank you all.
Appreciate that, and thank you so much for your comment.
So, hi, good night, everyone.
Do you mind pulling the mic just a little bit towards you?
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you. We want to hear you.
Hi, good night. My name is Sophia Bailey. I'm a landlord and I'm a mother of two. So, every time I think about, so on February the 9th that just gone, my son was arrested by the NYPD. My precinct is the 73rd precinct. First, I want to give a shout out to to the CO of the 73rd precinct, Vasquez. I met with him, he's very sympathetic, empathetic, and, he's a good listener, and he's trying to help me out with this situation. But I did contact the CCRB. What happened is we called the police, and the police, my son was attacked by one of the tenants, which is pending eviction. Actually, I went to a housing court today to get them evicted, and he was attacked and struck in the face by one of the tenants. Apparently, we called 911. When the police came, they went upstairs. I don't know what she told them. They came back downstairs, and they asked my son, "Are you hurting?" My son said, "No, she hit me in my face, but I'm okay." Then they turned and tell my son, "Oh, we have to arrest you." I said, "We arrest my son for?" I said, "We're the ones that called the police." He said, "Oh, the tenant said that my son slapped her and she's hurting." So they turned and said I said, "But this can't be right, because what you gonna arrest him for?" At first he told us that he's gonna arrest my son for assault. When they get to the precinct, they put my son through the system from 8:30 in the night till 5:30 in the morning. My son was at the 73rd precinct. They run him through the system. Then he came back to me and said, "Oh, your son have a clean record." I said, "He was born and raised here in Crown Heights. Never had a record. He never touched that lady." But anyhow, the long and short story is that they charged my son with harassment 3rd degree. So the arresting officer, well, he was okay, but it was the sergeant that gave him the okay. So when CCRB went and investigated the case, the internal affairs, they was actually investigating the wrong officer. There was interviewing the arresting officer instead of the sergeant, which is the one that gave the command to arrest my son. So I just want to say, we need the police. And we have some good community officers at the 73rd precinct. I go to the meetings. The public needs to come out more to these meetings, because then you get to meet the CEOs, you get to meet the community officers. I did recommend 3 of the community officers, Bishnoff, Donna, and Beckford. They're very good. And they come, any problem I have in the neighborhood and we have in the neighborhood, they are there. So, it's not like, I'm a nurse. They have good nurses and bad nurses, and they have good police and bad police. But, we as a community need to reach out more to the police and, attend the meetings. You get to attend the meetings, you see you see the other part of them. Okay. And I just want to say, I spoke to Venus Canterbury, very nice, articulate young lady, and I spoke to her supervisor, but so far this is 3 months now, and I haven't heard about anything from the CCRB, because I think the sergeant acted inappropriately. He gave me false information. He told me he was arresting my son for assault. Then he put him through the system, and then he couldn't tell me, he came back and apologized to me. He couldn't tell me, the reason, the specific reason why my son was arrested. He said, "Oh, if my son had said that he was hurting, he would have arrested the tenant also. So you have to lie to the police. It shouldn't be that way.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey, for your comment. I'm going to have John respond in regards to the open CCRB case.
Ms. Bailey, if you could speak to Jahai or Venus before you go and just make sure they have your up-to-date information, because I'm going to have someone give you a call tomorrow and we can update you on the status of the investigation.
Thank you so much.
Before, so I just want to say, because we do have to end at 8:30 and there's such a long line of folks who still have to speak, we're gonna just try and shorten the period to 3 minutes just so we can make sure everyone gets a chance to talk. I apologize, sir.
Hey, good evening. My name is Cyrus Smith. I'm with Brownsville Think Tank Matters. We have offices both in Brownsville and Flatbush. We are part of the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice Crisis Management System as well, with care violence sites both in Flatbush and Brownsville. Also in East Flatbush, we're part of the AD 58th Public Safety Task Force. Would echo a lot of what has been mentioned already, but just wanted to highlight a couple of years back, there was an article in the New Yorker, Bridging the Divide Between the Police and the Police in New York. And what that article did was it talked about how police and community relations, especially during the pandemic, work together, to get rid of, some of the officers that were engaged in nefarious acts. So what happened was you had community groups, you had residents, you had folk maybe from the community board, and then you even had officers who wanted to do the right thing that was speaking out on some nefarious police tactics, right? Unfortunately, or fortunately rather, one of the ways that we had one of the deputy inspectors removed was he was caught on camera, doing something that went nationwide. And because of that publicity, because of that press, that's how that officer ultimately, was able, to get moved out of our precinct. But even though we didn't want him in our precinct, it wasn't fair to dump him in somebody else's precinct as well. So just wanted to talk about, a little bit with regards to what's happening in social media and maybe using social media in a positive way to talk about, some of the success that we did have. Real quickly, I'll share with folk that's been around for a while. I got into this work in the early 90s, and I was on those committees that led to the development of the CPR campaign. Professional, courtesy, professional, and respect. And then also I was on those committees that led to the development of the CCRB. So although it takes, a really long time and it seems like things are not happening, these meetings for the people who, are a little bit skeptical, we are taking steps, in the right direction. I do want to thank publicly Jahai and Venus for coming out. They've worked with us in our middle schools. They've worked with us, in the afternoons, and they even work with us in the evening. Not only do they table, but they actually canvas with our team. And there's a lot of value in terms of them coming out canvassing, because our canvassing start when the sun goes down. So to have somebody at that level canvassing with our community, engaging with them in live time helps. I will say, that we do have some members who have gone through this process and the turnaround time, because I think people are a little anxious. They just get concerned. So I know one incident where we have 4 complaints against one officer, and that issue still has not been resolved. But I'll close there, but just definitely wanted to thank you all for the resources that you have shared with us already. But we definitely need more. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and for your commitment. We appreciate it.
Good evening. So my name is Rudy Racine. I'm the founder and CEO of Watch the Block. Before I tell you what Watch the Block is, I want to say first that, I feel encouraged seeing this large number of people here tonight. And I want to say thank you to the CCRB and the members on the board. I heard from other speakers this evening, and they talked about good apples and bad apples. And a young lady talked about which precincts they have trust, or which officers we trust, or how much trust we have in officers in the precincts, right? I think that's where we need to start, right? Watch the Block is a mobile application. So my company has a mobile application that allows users in the community to rate their interaction with an officer, and it assigns that rating to the precinct responsible for policing the area that the user is in. So it allows for the community to understand the community satisfaction score for the precinct. So within a 3-mile radius, we have the 79th precinct, we've got the 77th precinct, the 88th precinct, the 71st precinct, the 90th precinct. And I agree that there are some good officers that really work in that precinct or in those precincts, and there are some bad apples. We don't know which percentage or what percentage of bad apples are in any of those precincts. The app Watch the Block allows us to kind of get an idea of what the public's opinion is of those precincts. And my purpose for coming to this meeting, for attending the neighborhood community officer meetings, the community council meetings, is really to raise awareness of the community, to let them know that this resource exists. The information is out there as well. Happy to partner with the CCRB and provide information on the ratings that we get in the community. Again, our company's goal, our mission is to build healthier relationships between the community and the police that are tasked with protecting them. We hope to use data to inform the community so that we are empowered when we go to community council meetings. If a precinct has a 20% satisfaction rating, then we got to show up, right? If a precinct has a 95% satisfaction rating, we should probably still show up, but we should show up to celebrate and encourage and empower those officers to keep up the good work, right? So the data is in our hands. I know that the CCRB does some amazing work. I know that there are some bad apples in every single precinct. We would be naive if we didn't say that there were, right? But the data is not in our hands. I want to empower the community. So I have my card. You can download the app. I encourage you to rate using Watch the Block. If anyone on the CCRB wants to partner with Watch the Block, happy to do so. I can tell you that in the Brooklyn region, we don't have any ratings yet, but 2023, we are here. We're not going anywhere. We encourage you to use the app, download the app. We're not affiliated with the NYPD. We're not affiliated with the CCRB. We're not affiliated with New York City. Independent organization, founded by me, funded by me. And again, I'm encouraged in the importance of accountability and sharing data to inform and build healthier relationships. That's all I got. Thank you.
Did you sign in, sir? Because I'm.
My card as well. My card has the barcode if you want to download the app. So I'm happy to share my card. Whatever you want. I'll be here till the end of the meeting if anybody wants to talk to me.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Racine. We appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nicole Sharp, and I work at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University. I'm also on the Advisory Council for the New York State Office for the Prevention of Domestic Violence. I'm an advocate for domestic violence awareness for 15 years now, having lost my mother to domestic violence. I also sit on the Advisory Council for the New York City Department of Health Women's Advisory Board and the Black and Latina Subcommittee. I do a lot of advocacy work in my community. I'm speaking as a civilian today who has been harassed by police officers 9 times. I count them. I've been harassed to the point where I've had sexual advances by cops, and I've been threatened to be arrested if I don't approve of their advances. I have been ambushed. That's the second to last time. This was last August by 3 cop cars, unmarked, heavily tinted, ambushed, pictures taken. I even called the 911 because I thought I was about to be human trafficked. And 911 told me to get their license plates, and they helped me. I made a complaint with your board. Since last year, I haven't heard anything since. I even made a request for FOIL. I haven't heard anything since. I've been working with Senator Kevin Parker's office. I haven't heard anything from your board. I'm sorry to say that, but it's the truth. I even made a complaint a couple years before that as well, where a cop lied on me for jumping the turnstile with my daughter, which I never did. And here I was the second to last time coming from church one evening and just being attacked. I don't like to leave the house feeling that I may be triggered and traumatized once again by people who are paid to protect me, but obviously that's not the case. The last incident was cops, just 5 of them, just came up to my car as I'm sitting right around the corner from where I live in my car coming from work, model citizen. And I don't want to be used as a teaching moment for police officers, because that's what it was. And if I didn't call Assemblywoman Monique Chandler Waterman's office, and she called the CO, they would have still been harassing me. They actually stopped after that. So I shouldn't have to do that. I actually sit on the Assembly members' public safety task force as well. So I'm very active in the community, but I can say firsthand that I have been harassed by police officers, and I do not get any type of response. Thank you very much.
Art? Ms. Sharp, I just wanted to, first of all, apologize on behalf of the staff of the agency for not getting back to you. And if you could stick around till the end, I'd like to talk to you, get some more information and follow up on your prior complaints. And if you would like to file a complaint about something that the most recent incident, we have an investigator here who will take your statement. And you don't have to wait till the end. You can start that process now. Just tell Mr. Rose in the back.
And thank you, Ms. Sharp, and no need for apologies. We need to be accountable. So thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Anthony Jennings. I'm a representative of Life Camp, Queens, New York. I'm a youth development specialist and gang specialist. I've gotten training from law enforcement throughout the nation. And we are trained to de-escalate. We have no guns, we have no vests in CMS. And it never escalates to a violent situation, right? We talk about training, but yet we keep having these tragic events in our community, right? So just hearing the lady talk, if that was a bunch of youth, they'd be locked up right now for conspiracy, RICO acts, and it's all led by Patrick Lynch. Y'all are more afraid of him than making decisions that help this community. I work with 33 youth that recently got locked up for conspiracy in Queens, New York. With flimsy evidence against them, they are in jail waiting trial. We have so much evidence against these officers that commit these crimes in our community, and they just get moved from one precinct to the next. And we talk about accountability and training, and who is responsible for committing this RICO Act, which we call law enforcement? This conspiracy act to endanger these young Black and brown youth and put them in a system. And we talk about mentally challenged. Every time something happens to an officer, the youth record come up or he's mentally, they didn't know that going into the incident. But then we vilify them with their record or their mental capacity. If we know they're mentally challenged, why are we putting them in a system that ain't helping them? Everything is lock up, but we are not helping these young men and women who is getting arrested and getting them the proper treatment. Locking them up is not the answer. But we in CMS do not get the same budget. But none of us choke no kid out. That's talk worse to us than they ever do to the officers. But we still de-escalate it and we walk away with a peaceful solution. So it ain't training. But a lot of this crime in the community that we commit is poverty stricken because all the resources are taken out of these communities. We have to put the resources back and we won't have the problem we have. Policing will become a community again. But now it's like she said, it's military. It just come knock down doors, lock people up. We got to change that. Our people shouldn't be afraid to come out their house from the police. They're supposed to be there to protect and serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings, for your comments and even more importantly, for your decades of service to the young people in Queens and in the larger New York City community. I wanted to know if any members of the board wanted to make any comment before we went on to our next speaker. Okay, all right. Ma'am?
My name is Pamela Stevens. I work with Monique Chandler Waterman as her public safety task force. We did Occupy the Court. I want to say thank you for John Venus because I didn't know anything about your company until I started occupying. I went out giving out all your resources and explaining to them. And I'm hearing accountability. And I'm hearing we go after the officers. But I feel we should go after the precinct because if we go after the precinct, the officers are from, then they will train their officers to do the right thing. And that's the only statement that I have to make. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens, for your comment. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Idris Abdullah. I am a member, long-term member of the 79th Precinct Community Council. First, I want to thank CCRB for the job that you guys do in investigating the officers in the cases that need to be investigated. And I think if y'all did not do, or the CCRB did not do part of that, that strong effort in putting that out, I think we might be a little further behind the 8 ball. So I definitely want to thank y'all. But in the interim of us looking at officers, because just like it was said, and I don't want to reiterate, there's good officers and there are bad officers. I am a long-term member of the 79th Precinct Community Council. We have to understand and realize one thing. Getting to know our officers, communicating with our officers, this is how we can begin to start looking at how we can communicate and figure out what is the problem to some of these situations that we have. Sometimes these officers, they come into our community, they're afraid, they're scared, even though they're supposed to be trained a certain way. It's always different when you get out there and you begin to start using hands-on. You never know what's going to happen in the spare of the moment, although you're trained. The human instinct is to respond sometimes, but sometimes our officers, they get caught like that. So coming out to these precinct community council meetings is extremely important. Find out when and where your precinct community council meeting is. Find out who your community fair officers are. Begin that dialogue. Back in the days, the officers that was the most effective was the officers that communicated with the community, the officers that communicated with the homeowners, the officers that communicated with the kids. So this is where we are lacking now. Remember, our children is either part of the problem or part of the solution. We as parents are either part of the problem, part of the solution. Sometimes we don't want to say or tap our neighbor on the shoulder and say, listen, your son is doing such and such, such and such, or your daughter is doing such and such, such and such. But when we begin to start doing that, then we begin to take control over the situation. We begin to take control over the good officers, the bad officers, the way they react, the way they respond. So again, find out where your community affair, your precinct council meetings is. Get to those precinct council meetings. Unless we have the most safest neighborhoods in the community, there should be standing room only in that. I'm just coming from a meeting from the 79th Precinct Community Council in reference to the block associations for the summertime. And that communication that we have there with our community affairs officer, our new inspector, the captains, we have a very good response, a very good communication. So if you're in the 79th Precinct Community Council area, or 79th Precinct area, come to that meeting. If you're in the 8179, whatever area you in, go to those meetings. They are extremely important. That is where it begins. It starts at home, and it starts with the people that's teaching in the homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abdullah, for your comment.
Good evening, everyone. My name is, what's there?
Sorry, one of our board members had a comment. Yes.
Mr. Abdullah.
Mr. Abdullah. Mr. Abdullah?
Thank you, and thank you to everyone who's here tonight. This is important, and your presence is important tonight. But I just want to add that what Mr. Abdullah mentioned is every precinct commander and housing commander and transit commanders attendees are at those meetings that he describes. They're in the website. They have to be there. I mentioned that I was a chief for 20 years. I would have accepted nothing less, nor would any commanding officer do anything less. They have to be at that meeting. And this clock is important because we need to get to everybody. But at these meetings, you stand up, you speak as long as you want. You can see the CO, commanding officer, before he or she comes in. You can follow him out the door if you'd like. You could speak during a meeting. You get direct access. This is a separate body than the NYPD, and that's one of the reasons I believe in it, of course, and I'm a board member. But that is another resource. There are many resources, and that's one where you have direct, just like this, with the commanding officer, and everything that's been heard, that I've heard been said tonight, can be said there. And these are professionals. You know, they'll hear you. There's somebody else who mentioned the woman whose son was arrested. You know, she mentioned that Inspector Vasquez is a good listener, and she has it's not the outcome that she wanted, but she has his attention. Or they should not be in those positions. So just wanted to pass it on. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maisha Morales. For transparency, I initially was here as the constituent advocate for State Senator Jabari Brisport. He apologizes for not being here himself. He is traveling from Albany back to the district. It is after 8 o'clock, and after hearing some things, I decided to get up and speak. So I am now speaking as Maisha Morales, who was born and raised in Senate District 25, started off in Bed-Stuy, 4 generations, currently living in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. I am a advocate, community organizer, and fighter. I'm speaking, but most importantly, I am the mother, and I am speaking as the mother of an Afro-Boricua son, who is a beautiful young man, and my experience with my son, and how it started off as walking down the street, with him being a little boy, holding his hand, and him seeing officers and firemen, as most little children do, right? And they wave hi, and just very friendly, to walking down the street with him. Clearly, as he was getting older, at 10, they don't want mommy holding their hands, right? But walking alongside and seeing that same community officer look at my son and put his hand on his holster, as if my son is a threat. I live every day in fear that, is today going to be the day that I get that phone call, right? As an organizer, as a community board member, I'm for my people. I work with and organize with the residents, but especially public housing residents, to hear the harassment that they are going through, not only young people, right? We have elders in our community who are currently public housing residents, who are currently being harassed by NCO officers, right? And this is not to say that all NCO officers are bad officers, but there are some bad apples out there. And they put a bad name for those that are trying to do their job in a professional way. Constantly seeing harassment of our elders, our women, our young women in the community. So I'm speaking for them. I'm speaking for my son, and as a mother, and I'm sure there's many of us here who live in fear of whether or not today's going to be the day that we get that phone call. And as an organizer, yes, I understand about attending the precinct council meetings. I understand about reaching out to CCRB and working in partnership. I do a lot more outside of even what I just told you. But unfortunately, what is happening is that we have these certain bad apple officers, if you want to call it that. They continue to be moved from one public housing development to another. And over again, even though there is a track record of their bad behavior. And so hearing today that CCRB is looking at being defunded is concerning for me, right? Because yes, you need more staff, and I implore the community to get involved. And anyone who's listening on this call, if you're a public official, whether it be the mayor or the council members, please fully fund CCRB. But I also ask you guys and your outreach team, I don't know, work with your public officials. We need more outreach. We need CCRB's outreach team to be in public housing, showing up to those TA meetings, in the streets. We don't even have to wait for a meeting. And I am more than happy, as Maisha Morales, the community advocate, to work with your department. And so thank you.
So I know we're short on time. I just wanted to thank Ms. Morales for speaking. And one of the things you've all heard tonight are the people who know Venus and know Jahai. And I can assure you, in different neighborhoods, there are different names that'll get mentioned, because we have 5 people on the outreach team at CCRB for this whole city. And if you think about that, the fact that anyone knows Venus's name in this neighborhood is a miracle. But they do the work that Venus does, and Tim and Prince and the whole team, and Jahai is the leader and Yahira is the special advisor and head of Intergov, like and I know I've missed people and I'm going to regret it as soon as this call is over, as soon as we're done. But it is just not enough. And so when Ms. Morales was talking about the budget and we talked about the budget earlier, it is key that we get the support to do the work that we need to do for you. Sorry, sir.
Good evening. My name is Terrell Geis. I am a representative of the Black Opportunity Project. We're a nonprofit organization that fights for social and economic justice. I have a few points that I would like to focus on. One is the community and the police have to play more of an effective role in bridging the gap in the communication and trust with the youth in these communities. Parents need to take some of the blame as far as the youth are concerned also, though. After speaking with you in the Bronx, we were informed that the police are calling youth out their name, by name, calling youth by name, picking them up as if they're being arrested and taking and questioning them and dropping them off in rivals' neighborhoods. They're riding through the neighborhood, throwing down gang signs and dropping them off with their rivals. And pardon me, excuse me. The police are being captured on video doing these activities. And we recently sent the video to the CCRB on Instagram. What kind of trust can this behavior build? What kind of example is being set? These young people may want to mimic Chicago, but the police shouldn't indulge in that behavior with them. This is not Chicago. This is New York City. We should act as such. But last but not least, more has to be done to strengthen the CCRB. Electing a CCRB president official is not the answer. If the commissioner has final authority to dole out discipline according to the city charter, what would electing a CCRB do if the commissioner will still have the final authority? What kind of fiasco would we have on our hands with an election for positions you people have right now? Thank you.
Thank you. Sister, did you have a comment? Yes, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ms. Jones. I'm from the Flatbush Garden community. The 67 precinct is the precinct that covered my the Flatbush Gardens. So I'm here today because I feel like the 67 precinct, the way they handling complaints and coming out to investigate the complaints is unfair and biased. So I don't even know how to explain this to an employer. That's why I'm here today to give my testimony. Like when I go for jobs and they want to interview me or whatever, but my case was dismissed and thrown out. But still, you know, a record had a curve. So back in October 5th, 2022, I had a problem with a postal service worker, but I had to go to the central book and I was detained for the video that it was like a video that the police chose to pick, you know, and he didn't want it to bring the whole, you know, take the whole video. He chose the one footage and wrote a false report on a false statement. Like he wrote a false statement causing me to get a record. So how can I clarify this or have an investigation done, you know, on my behalf?
So we will have someone take a statement from you and investigate the incident. And we also have someone here today from our civilian assistance unit who will see if there are other services that we can connect you to that might be able to help you. So if you could just, if you wait, there's someone in the back, I'm sure, who will reach out to you and take a statement from you tonight. So.
Right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you,
I
Ms.
think
Jones.
There's one more person here and then there's someone online and then we really have to finish up.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Jones. Ma'am, if you had your comments, yes.
was actually came to observe, but I'll be amiss if I didn't say something. My name is Santina Brown Payton. I'm actually a resident of Bed-Stuy. I'm also on the Community Board 3. And I've gonna just basically say that my understanding from where I'm standing is that respect is due and respect should be given on both on the community level, but it should be more so identified and focused in the police department if they're here to protect, right? Respect, protect. That's not something that is done because we have a history of Black Americans in this country have not been respected at any cost, and they still haven't. It won't stop because we have several meetings, but it can stop if we all take initiative to look back at some of those cases that we have put in file, that those officers that have had complaints that no one has touched on, that they're almost close to retirement and folks is going out and they could go on vacation, but our folks that are still locked up in jail to this day because of minor incidents that could have probably been revealed by a board as such, or and I come from, I'm raised in Marcy Project, and my mother had 20 children. So you can imagine, I can stand up here and tell you some horror stories in regards to police officers, but there are some good police officers as well as there are community folks. And as a advocate for the community every day, the difference is that we keep forgetting about the pandemic. We keep forgetting about slavery. We keep forgetting that there are no, I heard the brother say, the parents are responsible as well. If you can look back at the crack epidemic that was not long ago, 1987 to be exact, where most of our children are in institutions. They're not home. They're not being trained by home. Then you have our other children who are in the ages between 50 or less, or either have had experience in crack or so, are now substance abusers, right? So most of them on the streets are either have some kind of mental illness or they're experiencing some kind of trauma. And most of it has come not just from the policemen, but because we keep acting like these are heroes, superheroes. They're not. They're human beings. They're not being trained. And those that have been trained have to retrain themselves because as we have to do so. Because now we're dealing with a new community with a whole different generations where we are being educated, but what are we doing with the education? So I'm just saying that just like they have GoFundMe to make sure you guys get some money, well, then I think that you guys need to attack our friendly politicians who do a idea of monies being distributed in the community. That's the idea where the money should be going. I don't say stop the police because they are needed, right? But if they are only taking the job because that's a career choice and the only choice that they have, they should be looking at another one. And then you have those who feel that they're qualified, like the lady said earlier, of taking the test. Then they should also be tested for mental illness, substance abuse, because they also are dealing with the same trauma. They're drinking the same water that we are. Open up we used to I know when I came, we had police athletic league where there was aviation, there was Vanguard, there was Colony House South Brooklyn. We had places where our children could go, our elders could go. We don't have any of those places right now. And there is no activities. We are all home and looking at the news and constantly being trauma, that when we see trauma, it's like looking at cartoons today. So it's not just one particular issue that we need to focus on, but if you guys are focusing on the activities and the accountability, you need to be accounting where the money is going. You need to account how we are servicing our community better. We need to also recognize that who's getting more privileges than others and how we can make it equal rim for everybody and not somebody. I think I said more than I need to say. Thanks.
I believe we have one last comment from somebody who is on the line. Yahira?
Hearing from Daniel Harita, followed by Assemblymember Cunningham, and that will conclude our public session.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Let me
Just pull up notes. Yes, how is everyone? My name is Daniel Heredia, representing Councilmember Farah Lewis of the 45th Council District. Thank you all so much for hosting this forum. And while I'm disappointed to not have been able to attend in person, we definitely have heard a great amount of community input and testimony. And I want to especially thank Venus for always offering to train our team on CCRB response and reporting. It's been very helpful for navigating some of these cases that we take in at our office. Tonight, I'm particularly intrigued with some of the comments that were made in the testimony regarding the false statements from NYPD officers during criminal trials, as well as how the city can more adequately address and respond to domestic violence cases with sensitivity. I want to ask a question in terms of helping us guide policy here, and hopefully the board is able to respond. I'm wondering if it would make sense to mandate or permit CCRB participation in some of the criminal cases that our constituents face at times when dealing with interactions with the police, and to self-initiate complaints based on the information discovered during the trials. As you know, we heard tonight that many of the people in court, for a variety of reasons, may not be able or may not be willing to go to the CCRB to report that there's false testimony against them, but perhaps there's a way that the CCRB can be more involved with what happens in criminal court to be able to assist and investigate these cases proactively. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to correct a mistake I made earlier by leaving out Nakai and Marwa, who are also two key members of our outreach team and who have done tremendous work for us. And I truly appreciate them, and I shouldn't have forgotten them.
All righty. I believe that concludes all of those who had public comments this evening. I want to thank you for those.
Sorry, Chair.
Do we have any old
Sorry,
business
Chair.
to come before the board?
Chair, sorry, we have one more comment. Assemblymember Brian Cunningham has joined us and would conclude our public session. Apologies. Sorry if you can upgrade.
Thank you.
Andrew, Andrew, Case, could you quiet for a couple minutes?
Is Assemblymember on virtually? Yes, okay.
Spence, I apologize for being on late, but I'm joining from Albany. Just wanted to commend again the CCRB for the incredible work they've done tonight in hearing from the public. As everyone knows on this call, I've been committed to criminal justice reform since my time at the Center for Court Innovation, and just wanted to stop in tonight to just commend the work we're doing and continue to foster community participation. Again, I know the night has been long spent, so I don't want to waste too much time, but just wanted to be with you here tonight in spirit. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your comment. All righty. One more time, I believe that concludes the public comments portion of the meeting. Do we have any old business to come before the board? Any old business? Do we have any new business to come before the board? Okay, hearing none, I am going to move now that we break into executive session. The agenda for the executive session is the board will deliberate on a full board case, receive an update from the executive director on pending personnel actions and board member training, and the general counsel will update us on litigation. I'd like to make a motion that this meeting be concluded. Second? All those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.